What's up guys, and welcome to a new video. This time we're going to have a look at the best games that were released in 2020. In the end of 2021. Yeah, I think I got a little bit off schedule there, but don't worry, I'll do my best to get back into it. But before we start, as every year, some things I have to explain beforehand. First, this is not a ranking from worst to best, just a list of what games I enjoyed throughout the year. Second, all games are available either through the L-Site, the biggest H game distributor, or Steam, the biggest game distributor. Links are all in the description. Third, since I'm not allowed to put the link to my uncensored version directly in the description, there is another way I can't really talk about though, but looking in the description might let you find out. Oh, and I also added a small picture that indicates what games on this list are censored by mosaics or not at all.
Have you seen this little character? Look at that. No!
Shut the fuck up!
And with that out of the way, let's get started. Dragon Ball Super Lost Episode is another iteration in the series of Dragon Ball games made by Yamamoto Dojins. As all the other games, it's made in RPG Maker, but this time it features the DB Super cast with Broly, Chilai and... Lemo. I don't know who that is. Well, anyway, you were visited by Goku who wants you to train 7 days straight to fight him. Why? I don't know, maybe that makes sense if you watch the series or the movies. I only watched the Sakuga of the movies. The gameplay consists of the most shallow mechanics RPG Maker has to offer, with a little bit of artificial depth in form of weapons that work better on specific enemies. But that's about it. I didn't expect Yamamoto to actually take a step back from the rock paper scissors battles from the last game, but the Madlet actually did it. Anyway, let's talk about the important part. After each day, Chilai will approach Broly in a very special way, leading to beautifully drawn and animated scenes that are unmatched if it comes to authentic Dragon Ball. And those are also the reason why the game is here on this list. Although I have to admit that an experienced Chilai teaching Broly about the birds and the bees as if he's an elementary schooler is kind of a turn-off for me. But I guess it's at least true to the Dragon Ball lore. Right guys? Overall, I'd say this game is still kind of fun for around 2 hours of playtime. The gameplay works as intended, barely overstays its welcome, and the rewards for it are absolute top tier. So if you like Dragon Ball, you'll probably love this one. I mean, I talked about Alien Quest Eve already in my Patreon Spotlight 8, but let me roll it up for you once again. It is a Metroidvania heavily inspired by the Metroid series. I mean, yeah, obviously it is, but there's like, you get what I mean in a second, okay? Mother Brain goes rampage and kills everyone, and you play as Ellen, trying to free the space station of all monsters. So you walk and whip your way through the different parts of the stations, leveling up your stats and finding new power-ups in form of new whips and perks. There's not a lot to say here. Controls are crisp, the visuals and sound are amazing, and there's plenty of different enemies and even tough boss battles. The game just has everything a Metroidvania needs, even one without 18+ content. The one thing it doesn't have though is invincibility frames, which can result in some pretty annoying and undeserved deaths, but as long as you constantly save, you'll be fine. But apart from its mostly well executed gameplay, Alien Quest Eve also features tons of well animated CG, definitely one of the best if it comes to vector animations. For each enemy there are 2 scenes and there's one full screen game over CG with lots of customization, so in that regard it also does an amazing job. All in all, I'd say this is a must play. The nearly horror-like atmosphere, especially at the beginning of the game, is something I also experienced in big games like Metroid Dread, and even though it will never be as polished as a AAA game, it is not as far off as you'd expect from a AAA game. I don't even know where to start here. So, Being a Dick is a visual novel revolving around a dude who goes to college and becomes part of the Dicks, one of the houses at the college campus, and thus starting his college life the way I expected it to be. Chats, alcohol, dildo helmets, hookups, first challenges, and all the other wild stuff you can imagine. At least that's what I think college is about. I'm German, I never went to college. Or anything that requires a higher IQ than 50. But obviously there's a lot of drama. The Tri-Alphas want the Hots, but the Dicks also want them. Then there's this girl at home waiting for you, but there's also this other girl that lets you sleep in her room. And feminist teacher is also super funny for you, at least as much as some of the hots, but only if you do the right thing. And let me tell you, there's no right thing to go with all of them. You'll have to decide. All of your decisions will also decide your dick level, which makes some decisions available, but also locks some others. I could talk about the story for at least an hour, but let me just point out how well this visual novel falls into place. The writing is absolute top tier. It has everything you could ask for. Well written characters, humor, sadness, love, violence, and obviously a lot of stuff. And especially the caught me by surprise. As someone who is easily turned off by soulless 3D, I have to admit that those scenes actually worked way better for me than 90% of the stuff I've seen before. Regardless of the hot context in which most scenes are presented, they themselves are also pretty well animated and feature amazingly detailed 3D models. Sometimes it even took me a second to realize that those aren't real people. There is definitely a lot more to talk about here, like the minigames that were always fun, except this shit, or unlockables and stats apart from the dick meter, but just trust me on this one, it's probably one of the best VNs ever made.
No cap on that one.
Castle in the Clouds perfectly aligns with all previous games of Libra Huts. Main character Succubus, check. Pixel art, check. Metroidvania, check. And story I couldn't care less about, also check. You basically just walk your way through different levels, fight enemies with your whip and some magic until you reach the end of it. Along your way you'll find new weapons, new abilities, gain XP, save some girls from captivity, and explore everything the world has to offer. As for the abilities, it's the standard repertoire of every Metroidvania, double jumping, hanging from walls, diving, etc. Castle in the Clouds is far from trying to reinvent the wheel, but what it copies pretty well. In comparison to the old Castlevania games, the controls feel a lot more responsive and crisp, and the decision to keep the slight delay on the whip attack shows that they knew what they were doing. They even kept the wall chicken, although there is a better way to regain HP. You regularly encounter enemies that have hearts around them, and I mean you know what that means. They love you, so if you give them a ring they'll marry you and get the good ending. Well okay, they f like animals. Pixelated animals. Yeah. I mean, I have a thing for pixel art, or not, so to me seeing them is satisfying to a certain degree, but I also don't want to say that they are perfect in any way. They serve their purpose for people who like it, but only in combination with the awesome gameplay this became a part of the list. So if you're just here for those scenes, you'll probably be disappointed. But if the gameplay matters to you in any way, you should definitely give it a try. I'll surely play the next game of my boys at Libra Hut Studios as well. Alright guys, small ironic disclaimer. If you don't like Futanari, just skip to the next game. But if you're more like me...
Look at this! A bonus!
Listen to me carefully now. Futa Fix Dine'n'Dash is a visual novel where you play as Emily, a girl who is... a little bit different from other girls.
What are you, retarded?
She works in a diner which just serves as a purpose to meet her up with a noticeable amount of different girls for some after-work meetups. For example, we have Cindy aka The D Only Makes It Better, Fandom, Vanilla, Public, and most importantly, Mine's Bigger. All of those little encounters play out in separate stories that you can unlock throughout this kinetic novel. The writing itself is decent enough to serve its purpose, but the main attraction is the CG. Not only do I like this kind of anime-esque art style, but there are even hand-drawn animated scenes that easily wipe the floor with most actual series. Surely there are only a few of those, but they spice up the encounters quite a lot. Futa Fix Dine'n'Dash doesn't really deliver an amazing story or any gameplay, but it does offer a decent experience, especially if Futa is on your tackle list. Does this trigger anything in you? Well, it should if you're a true gamer like myself.
Yes. Oh, und jetzt kann ich genießen.
But if not, I can tell you that Juuyoku No Jousai is heavily inspired by Dark Souls. You have the dodge roll, bonfires, separate controls for the left and right arm, bosses that can hit quite hard, etc. But there are also some quite obvious differences like the top-down perspective, clothing damage and enemies with hearts around them. Overall, I gotta say that they did a pretty good job on the gameplay. Right from the beginning of the game, you get taught that enemies have different attack patterns and that blocking or dodging at the right time is crucial. That different weapons handle differently and that no enemy is simple cannon fodder. All of them require your attention. Sure, this is no competitor to actual Dark Souls in any regards, but the 8 scenes you'll encounter upon touching the right enemies is pretty good. Fluid as hell, has different states and obviously a finish animation. Same goes for the unlocked CG after defeating a boss.
That's why I love Nestle Crunch.
But this time the animation is even better and ends with the drawn CG as a little cherry on top. Apart from its weak playtime of around 3 hours, this game was one of the most fun games I played this year, and as long as you want to play with both hands, this is a game you should check out. Lorena and the Land of Ruins is a third-person shooter where you play as Lorena, who's stranded on a mysterious place where this cat girl tries to get an airplane to work or something like that. I don't know exactly since the game is in Japanese, but don't worry, you'll be able to easily figure out the most important aspects of the game. As I said, it's a third-person shooter, so most of the time you'll shoot in third person and that works pretty well for the most part. Headshots get registered properly, the controls are better than most other Age games I played, and the variety of weapons from projectile pistols over snipers to an RPG is pretty decent, although they don't play as different as I would have hoped for. The bosses are probably the most fun enemies in the game, and there was definitely a lot of potential to make them even more fun, but sadly only the last boss really utilizes everything the previous bosses would have needed to make this a truly awesome experience. Fuck, that was a long sentence. The animated scenes are also pretty good. You have different camera angles and animations that go ways beyond in and out. But the price for that is the amount of them. There are only 13 scenes in total, and even worse, I didn't see a single scene throughout the whole game because I never died. You do unlock scenes by beating a level as well, but I just didn't bother to check them out until I beat the whole game. I'd still heavily recommend this game if you have a thing for third-person shooters and can deal with the fact that the hentai isn't part of the experience but a bonus you'll unlock. Oh yeah, and make sure to avoid those survival levels. They go on forever and the only way to finish them is to die. I don't know what went through the devs' heads there. The title of the game is as special and innovative as the actual game. You are Warrior Girl. You walk right, you hit enemies, that's it. See you next year. Okay, well, there is a little bit more to it. You can also jump and block enemy attacks. If you want to be real fancy, you can even deflect attacks by blocking at the right time. After each of the 7 levels, which are actually only 4 and 3 bosses, you can buy new equipment and items in order to become stronger. Or fancier. While the game itself is fun for the around 40 minutes of playtime, by now you probably realized that the real star of the show are the scenes. And you're right with that. The art style is pixelated, like pixel art, but the animations themselves aren't hand-drawn frame by frame, but just move around like a puppet in a 3D program. But for some reason it still looks fucking awesome. You have slimes, goblins, tentacles, succubi, incubi and even a dragon. Everything your heart desires, and the animation gallery gives you quite a lot of options to set up a scene. Zoom in, change clothes, etc. I didn't spend too much time in the gallery, but that was mostly due to me being in a hurry to record some of the games. But it's definitely one of the fappier games on this list. I know it's not a word, but you know what I mean. And also ways better than Angel Girl and Kung Fu Girl you used to play excessively in your teens. By the way, same developer. Ayano the Exorcist is another RPG Maker game where you play as Ayano, an exorcist, who has been sent out to purify a tentacle cave. And that's everything the game tells you about the story. When I first started the game, I was bombarded with questions. What spells do I want? I don't know. What items do I want? I don't know. What the f is even my goal? So I walked around, ended up with quite a bunch of scenes from passing different sections and some turn-based combat until I lost and was back to the title screen. And my initial reaction was, nah man, f it. But after reading a little bit into it, I realized that this game is less like a story-driven RPG and more like a roguelike, where you have to figure out what to do. What skills fit you best in combat? What statuses gave you the most problems, and where did you turn the wrong way to avoid meeting the same fate? Hell, even the ending of the game changes whether you save other girls or kill the boss straight away, because you can just do that. But even if you don't know exactly what you want to do, the game throws quite a lot of scenes in your way for simply walking around. Narrow paths? Sure dude. Ropes? Got you. Slime pool? Yee. Obviously all scenes are amazingly drawn and feature all kinds of tentacles, and we all know I like tentacles, you like tentacles, so don't come crying to me like a little b*** if you see some nasal penetration. The only thing disappointing to me was the lack of actual nudity. Sure, the suit is half transparent, but that doesn't go for the lower parts. Well, maybe that's just a way to avoid censoring everything. I don't know. In the end, I actually had quite a lot of fun with it. The are extremely enjoyable if you like tentacles, and the exploration, especially if you don't look up everything in the walkthrough, is definitely something that can entertain you for some hours. The one and only management game on this list is called Goblin Burrow. Here you play as a goblin commander who needs to build an army in order to conquer the lands and reign humanity. But first you need to listen to the National Geographic voice.
ゴブリンが人里に降りてきました。彼らは雑食なので、人間の育てる作物や家畜、余った食料なども好むのですね。
And do the tutorial that tells you everything you need to know. So you start setting up your defense troops and traps for incoming attacks and prepare your attack forces to capture girls. Once you found a girl, you need to fight and defeat her in order to bring her back to your cave and expand your army. Because every girl you capture serves as livestock to give birth to more goblins and even special units like champions, rogues, shamans, hobgoblins or paladins. And if you think that wasn't fucked up enough, you'll need to make sure to regularly give them items to keep their sanity up, because if you don't, they will kill themselves.
くそくらえです。
The combat works as well as it needs to for a game like this. It follows your typical turn-based rules with a few twists. For example, you can set a commander and the type of units they control. Those units work as kind of a shield for the commander and only have 1 HP. That means whether you have a champion control normal goblins or if you have a complete champion unit, 15 damage means 15 units are dead, independent of their individual HP. On the flip side, if those 15 champions in a unit attack, I get that the devs really want to emphasize the fact that goblins are just not some invincible strong creatures, but it just feels bad to lose so many characters you grinded for in a single attack. On the other hand, the fact that you can retreat at any time and come back before the enemies can recover is a mechanic I find perfectly fitting, lore and gameplay wise. There are some other mechanics I won't go into now, but let me tell you that Goblin Burrow is a tough game. The frequency in which the game forces you to protect yourself can get frustrating, especially if you play it for the first time. So if you want to avoid that, feel free to lower the difficulty in order to see some of the pretty good artworks for the big amount of different girls. That was also a very long sentence. Goblin Burrow is a game that will make you come for the good artworks and cute girls, but it will make you stay for its challenging and well thought out gameplay. Last Evil was as far from my list as I'm from a decent upload schedule, but then Hardwiggen came around the corner and bought it for me. So at this point in time there was supposed to be a joke about me calling him a poor student and buying him a gift that just exceeds the value of Last Evil. But this motherfucker just refused my money. He just refused it. Well, I guess I'm sorry I'm only a 9-to-5 worker, not like a special YouTuber like you. I can't do shit with any VTubers. When my channel gets taken down, there's no one coming to save me. Yeah. But why do you have to shove up my face like that hard? I thought we were cool. Anyway, Last Evil is a roguelike similar to Slay the Spire, where you move around on a randomly generated tile map and fight enemies by using your deck of cards. The battles are quite simple. Draw a certain amount of cards and use as much of them as possible until you run out of mana and or lust. Mana is going to replenish at the end of each turn, while lust only increases by 1 for each turn and can be taken over to the next battle. Different from most games, your goal is to take no damage at all by using cards that shield you for the next round, which is also the reason why this game exactly tells you what the enemy is going to do and how much damage he's going to put out. So it's not about predicting the enemy attacks, but having proper answers for it on your hand. But how do you get the proper answer? Well, the game lets you add a card to your deck after each one battle, and you can also upgrade single cards and buy new ones from the merchant. I personally felt like the deck changes could have been a little faster in order to actually make it an individual deck and not just an extension of your standard deck, but maybe the devs tried to hide the fact that they can't compete with Slay the Spire. Nonetheless, there are some amazing things you can do with it, up to a deck that can simply kill everything in one turn. At least that's what Hart told me. I didn't get to that point. And I already see that I could fill another page with the rest, so let's make it quick. Bosses are really fun and all have their unique mechanics. Defeating mini-bosses grant you extra bonuses. The skill tree that carries over your runs take way too long to be filled, and the age scenes are barely worth mentioning. Clunky, basic stuff. I don't exactly know what it is, but this game caught my attention for a long time. 10 hours of playtime at a time where I was busy with being depressed is quite a number, considering I could have played literally every other AAA game. So if you're not completely scared by the roguelike mechanics, check this one out. Lustful Slave Arena is a management game where you play as a slave trader and take care of two girls. Claudia, your average blonde cutie, and please sit on my face, mommy. Your goal is to train both of them and let them win scheduled arena battles in order to get to the top and win money. Each day you have a limited amount of points to spend on activities like combat training, working, or a special type of training which will make them more open to more profitable work. As long as you give them enough time to relax, they'll do just fine in the arena. Here you fight in a turn-based combat against different enemies, and although it is not necessarily deep, it can be frustrating because it seems like the game punishes you heavily for not exactly doing what it wants you to do, resulting in early game overs that just feel undeserved. So you better have a backup save and go for trial and error instead of actually thinking about what you want to do. Apart from the combat, there's also some frequent events that put your girls in danger and let you decide whether you want to help them or not. But be careful, not helping them can result in giving them STDs, which heavily influences your girl's stats and are a pain to get rid of. But I'll be honest with you, for those scenes the penalties are a small price to pay. I just love the art style. It might not look too special in your eyes, but especially Ellen is just sexy as hell. And now just add some big enemies and the fact that the art is completely uncensored and you got yourself a great gallery to check out after the 2 to 3 hours for one ending, of which there are several in the game. I really can't say anything bad about the game, even the combat feels more like a nitpick to me. It's nothing that will change your life, but it's just really enjoyable. In NTR Densetsu, or NTR Hero, you play as a Chad with a big sword who tries to seduce his neighbor's wife. And how are you going to do that? Well, by producing trash so you can pay her to come over to clean. Yeah, but obviously you also need to earn some money beforehand, so you do one of two different jobs. One is sorting chicks by their gender, or massaging some customers. Interesting. That earned money can also be put in new decorations that will increase your stamina or wages, but also in new and other things you typically find in NTR anime. Camera and stuff, sleeping pills. You know where this is going. Coming back to the purpose of the game, once you have her over, you can start doing some things to get her attention. And as long as you don't overdo it for the first 3 times, you'll be rewarded with more scenes. And those scenes definitely pack a punch. As I don't get tired to mention, I love pixel art. And those animations are just great fun to watch. I have nothing to criticize here. And well, there is nothing more to this game. It's only about 1.5 hours long, but super fun and simple to play, all while rewarding you with great material. And I love that little Darkest Dungeon reference. Overgrown Genesis is a RPG Maker game set in the future during a zombie apocalypse. You play as Juno, a former engineer that looks for a new job and ends up being a key figure in finding a cure for the fungal infection that makes men become zombies and women just really horny. Right off the bat, the game introduces you to the way corruption works in this game. Contrary to most games that just give you tons of money to emulate a reward, Overgrown actually lets you skip missions, which at first sounds bad, but is actually really helpful if we consider that they can actually be tough and strip you of resources. Because this game wasn't made to be played one-handed while 90% of your blood is in a better place than your brain. The active gameplay forces you to dodge zombies, take all the supplies in reach and only shoot if there is no other option. Instant game overs if you ignore the more or less obvious signs for them are also a thing. But as with getting killed by the enemies, the instant game overs also have pretty good CG in store. They're definitely more on the darker side, and the change in art style throughout the game is something I really don't like, but for the theme of the CG and the fact that all of them look pretty good, I'll make an exception. But even apart from the CG, the pixel art is quite great, and combined with the tense gameplay and great atmosphere, I'd say this is one of the games I enjoyed most throughout this year. Guys, let me level with you for a second. I know you don't watch my videos, so I can tell you that Custom Made 3D or Nekopara are very good games to I know you're looking for the gems that you didn't know about yet, and let me tell you, this is exactly what you've been looking for, and there is no way I'll do it justice by talking about it for a minute. But I hope that I'll give you enough info so you want to check it out, because it's just that good. So Pronant Symphony is probably the most in-depth RPG you can find on this list. Here you play as a demon and his 4 companions Julie, Seraphina, Edito and Neva in search for money and power. Despite what it looks like though, they aren't voluntarily here. You, the main character, have hypnotized them, but only to a degree where they follow you but still have their own mind and character. Surely you'll be able to change that once you gain more power, but do you really want to? We'll touch that topic a little later on. First of all, the main area of the game is the Pandemonium, a hole that directly leads to hell. The further down you get, the more dangerous the enemies become and the better items and resources you'll find. So you venture out, slay enemies, take all valuables you can find, talk to people, take part in different quests and events that are happening and so on. Pronant Symphony is plastered with interesting things to discover, and while all the mechanics can overwhelm new players, I don't remember a game giving me such an intense feeling of discovery and adventure. The battles, while being turn-based, are pretty strategic, with 5 different characters to act on a single turn, and things like the constantly changing environment add an extra layer of depth. The characters can be managed by giving each of them a whole set of equipment, unlocking new skills, etc. Crafting also plays a role, whether it be for supplies or armor and weapons. One of the amazing things this game does is not giving you a path to go or a thing to do. Whether you want to grind for levels, farm crystals or other items, or just go straight to the boss of the floor, everything is possible and completely up to you. And that goes especially for your companions. As I said before, once you gain enough power, you can make them basically do everything you want, from making them spell ICAP out loud, or straight up them, or making them sell their bodies. But to be honest, I could hardly get myself to do it. You see, the game is made so it's nearly impossible to not build a connection to them. Sure, they started as some brainwashed humans, but throughout the game you'll take part in conversations with them, maybe they even praise you, look up to you, embrace you and comfort you when you're down. Like friends would do. I swear to God, the only scenes I showed you are the ones I explicitly recorded for that purpose. I was absolutely unable to live with the consequences of them hating me. This time, boys, this time emotions won over horny. But the scenes were still pretty hot. Pronant Symphony is an amazing combination of engaging RPG mechanics, a great sense of exploration and the struggle of deciding whether you want to be good or evil. I have to admit that this game just isn't for you if you simply want some CG to do. But apart from that, it's a game I want to recommend to everyone who even has a slight interest in RPGs. Sanguine Rose is one of the more basic games on this list. A simple and short VN about you, the leader of a mercenary group who currently holds a sexy but deadly woman as hostage. And that's everything I can say because this game is limited to exactly that scene. But while that sounds like a bad idea, it gave the writers the possibility to flesh out that part as much as possible. You'll frequently encounter decisions that can change up the outcome of the story quite a lot, giving you new age scenes and information you can use to make the right decision in your next playthrough. Because this game is made to be played multiple times to get the full picture of what's going on. The art style was something I personally found very interesting, mostly because it's something I never really saw before. Surely some of you won't like it as much as I do. Yeah, I can kinda see where you're coming from, judging by some of the CG or the portraits themselves. But on the other hand, there is some really amazing art that was either very how do I put it, appealing, or just gave the vibe of a genuine fantasy game without content. Overall, I'd say that Sanguine Rose's art style and age scenes benefit the story and overall experience a lot instead of holding it back. Hence why this game is on this list. It's again one of those games you just don't play purely for the erotic art, but for its well-written characters, story and lastly some enjoyable art, both from a visual and an erotic aspect. Okay, but that was enough of played for the story. Summer Countryside Life barely has any gameplay at all. It's more like an interactive gallery. Here you play as a dude who visits his childhood friend after a long time, and your goal is basically just to make her so you can do more and more with her. I just have to say, this is probably one of the hottest pixel art I've ever seen, even outside of games. Yes, there aren't too many of those. Yeah, the game isn't filled with those scenes, but even the usual CG is amazingly drawn and the pixel art were made with absolute care and detail in mind. Can you even say it like that? I don't know. Well guys, I think I have to go for a minute.
12 seconds later.
So yeah, definitely not a gameplay masterpiece, but slowly buying all the items from the store, including different outfits, and taking her with you to different spots in order to find all this special CG was definitely fun enough for those 1.5 hours of playtime. Succumate is the predecessor of Summer Memories from my last best of video. Once again, you're definitely a legal male who happens to get visited by an also definitely legal succubus who decides to live with him. Why? Because she needs to fulfill a quota on gathered and MC seems to have the right amount of energy to deliver that. But suddenly, the police stands on the doormat. Apparently a young adult has been found dead in his apartment, seemingly drained from something. Could it be that Lilim, the cute succubus now living with you, murdered someone? Nah, look at the way, she would never do that, nah. And now it's up to you to find out what's going on, so you gather clues and come to your own conclusion. But you can also play with fidget spinners, yay! Or earn money by working as a waiter. But you can also collect all the gacha figurines for Gacha Man. Or what about giving your neighbor the good old NTR treatment? And you can even play music. For animals. There's a lot of stuff to do, more than you are actually able to do within the game span of 30 days. Just make sure that at the end of each week you're able to provide Lilim everything she needs. And that's mostly what the game revolves around, managing your stats in a way that you gather enough money and affection from all the girls around you while maintaining enough resources for Lilim. But trust me, it's worth keeping all the girls in mind, simply because the pixel animations are amazing. Especially the cutscenes often have the vibe of an animated series rather than game CG. And the only thing I found a little off-putting was the limited color palette.
Brand new 16-bit Super Nintendo with Super Mario World, wow!
But that slowly faded away once I really got into it. Compared to Summer Memories, Succumate definitely has better storytelling and some of the animations just exceed the ones from Summer Memories. Yet both of them have the same quality of freedom and fun minigames, so if you played and liked one of them, definitely try out the other one as well. And if you didn't play any of them, just play both. Again, Acerola comes up with a new game in their RPG series that often feel a little bit like EA releasing a new FIFA. Just that Acerola actually improves their games. You have One-san, Ara, Loli Fox Girl, and main character is something in between. One-san gets kidnapped by Ara and promises not to hurt her as long as MC makes at least one man each day. So you venture out on a quest to save your sister by traveling to different places through the library while keeping in mind that it is not only important to save your sister, but every man, or better, everything male as well, because of the miasma that slowly kills them. Where did that come from? Everything revolves around MC having to everything that moves, whether it's to level up, expand your skill tree, gain money, or advance the story. But you know what? I won't complain, since the scenes are just great to watch and have so much variety. Yeah, I know that poses have been recycled from previous games or even within that game, but that didn't bother me at all. In the end, they keep the quality high enough for me to not get tired of them. But as I said before, there are definitely some improvements. Take for example some of the minigames that can't be called challenging, but at least are a welcome change in gameplay. The overall interface has been changed to be a little bit easier to understand, as well as the skill tree. And lastly, the battles were changed up a little bit by having Corrin as a side character that can be used in an aggressive or defensive way. If there is one thing to criticize, it's the excessive amount of throughout the game. There are points in the game where you just want to advance the story but have to everyone in a 2-mile radius because of that miasma mechanic. But I mean, that could also be a plus for a lot of you. Tier and the Library of Labyrinths is definitely one of those turn your brain off and play it with one hand games. So if you're looking for that, you'll be more than satisfied. As well as with basically every roller game. And that's it guys. A year too late, but at least it's finally here. I hope you enjoyed the video even with its late release, and if you did, feel free to like the video and tell me which one of those games you'll most likely check out. And in case you didn't subscribe yet, join the army of Kumas who wait months for a single upload. No, but seriously, I'm glad to have all of you guys commenting under my videos to this day and just being patient with me. Without you, I think I would have stopped after all the BS from YouTube I had to put up with. But to be fair, my lack of uploads doesn't have anything to do with YouTube itself. It's more like I just didn't feel like doing anything channel related. And instead of being apologetic about it, I have to say it the way it is. I'll make videos whenever I feel like it. That might sound a little harsh, but if my psychological condition or other circumstances in my real life don't align with sitting down for 100 hours to make a video, I will simply not do it. And I know, contrary to what most people would think, you're mostly grown adults that get it. So thanks again for listening to my TED Talk, and I wish all of you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Bye!